Hi, and welcome to the Render podcast. This is our first but it is our first recording.
First go at it.
So we're going to be a little awkward. Should be exciting. We're going to talk about the Sobey Art Awards today. So just as an introduction, my name is Emily. I am in my final year of the MA program at Carleton in Art History. And I am also the editor of Render this year. So that is the reason for just jumping into trying out something new. Leaving a legacy. That's a weird.
Okay, yeah. That's
strange.
Heavy.
It's so strange. No pressure, but now pressure. Anyways, my research interests are in, Japanese Canadian art history, and I'm looking at some contemporary artists and how they interrogate the legacy of the internment. I have broader interests, but that's what I'll stick with for now. And my co-host is Jessie.
Hi, I'm Jessie. I'm second year art history and digital humanities and maybe possibly curatorial practices, but that's some administration stuff. I don't know. I'm interested primarily in the internet. And we'll just leave it at that. I'm also an artist, so I kind of have that going, I guess. Yeah.
The artist and the internet.
Yeah, the artist and the internet.
It's a broad field. So yeah, I mentioned that this is our first kind of go at this, and we thought we'd try something new for Render this year for our blog. So we thought we'd try out a podcast. I know some people who have been doing podcasting for years and really enjoy it. And I actually know a couple people who study podcasting. So cool. I thought it would be an interesting way to see what our audience kind of uses a different avenue for our audience, which is largely Carleton art history students, maybe some other graduate art history students.
We're going to de-academicize it. De-academicize it. We're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it and not be so theoretically focused, as is the very isolating life of a graduate student.
Yes.
So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the Sobey Arts Awards today because they recently were announced. The winner was announced about 3 weeks ago, I think November 6th. And actually that was not 3 weeks ago then. Yes, it was. But I'm actually not sure if it was November 6th or it was a little earlier.
It was a little while.
It was the first week of November. That's all we need to know. And so the Sobey Awards, for any of you who aren't really sure, they were established in 2002 by Donald Sobey, and they are for Canadian artists under the age of 40. And basically just to be eligible, artists must have exhibited in Canada within 18 months of nomination, but they don't actually have to live and work in Canada when they're nominated, just that they are still exhibiting. They've exhibited in the last year and a half. And this is actually the first year where the Sobey Arts Awards are under the stewardship of the National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa. So that's part of our interest as well, because we could actually go and see the exhibition of the shortlisted finalists.
This was amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, we'll talk about that.
It's a whole reason. And then the previous stewards up for the past 14 years were the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia. So not exactly easy to get to if you live in the capital region. So the Sobeys have become, if not the most prominent award for young artists in Canada to receive, particularly in terms of financial prize. It's a $50,000 award, and I believe the shortlisted artists receive maybe 10,000. I think they still get they still get a prize, so that's good. And then all of the work is exhibited, but also it's good for international recognition. Some previous recipients that are of note, I guess they're all probably of note if they've won the Sobeys, but some ones I want to particularly mention include the late Annie Pudagook, Nadia Meyer, Dwayne Linklater, and Abbas Akfan. He was the winner last year, and his work is really great. So the individual institutions and curators, they nominate the artists, and then a panel of jurors, one from each geographical region, as well as an international juror, which is new this year, as well as a managing juror to kind of oversee the whole project. narrow down to a long list of 25 artists, and then down to a short list of 5 artists. And then they announce the winner about at the beginning of November every year. All 5 shortlisted finalists, as we mentioned, they get to be shown in an exhibition. Now it's at the National Gallery. And the managing juror is probably going to be the NGC's senior curator, of contemporary art, probably in the future. I imagine she was this year, and I imagine they're going to continue with that because that would make some like kind of logistical sense. And I guess I should mention the geographical locations include Ontario, Quebec, the Atlantic, prairies and North are combined together, and BC and Yukon are combined together. So, I mean, that's a little bit problematic.
It is problematic for sure.
So, yeah, but Jesse will let us know about who our shortlisted artists were.
All right. So, in order of the little booklet we have here, the first one is Jeremy Shaw, who represents the West Coast in Yukon. He's the winner, in case you didn't know. Spoilers, he won. Interesting, like, that he deals with, he seems to be like a media artist. He's based in Berlin right now. Then we move on to the Prairies in the North, and it's Brenda Draney, painter, really like delicate, beautiful paintings. Then it is Charles Stankovich from Ontario. So good, research-based work. Amazing. Oh my gosh, like specifically made something for the exhibition at the National Gallery. Definitely see that. And Hajra Mahid?
Yes.
Who makes like beautiful work. She's from Quebec, like super delicate, like kind of found art pieces, and also like schematic drawings dealing with surveillance. Oh my god, I loved it so much. And then from the Atlantic, we have William Robinson, who did this interesting piece about reclaiming metal, and I'm not really 100%, we'll talk about that one, but it was interesting. I wasn't 100% on board with that, but I think like he's coming from a really interesting place. So, okay. Yeah, that's the rundown. That was my rundown. I probably didn't do Robinson justice, but we'll talk more about that.
Well, I mean, especially because like you just talked about how amazing Charles and Hajra's work was.
Like, obviously I'm very biased, because like research-based work I find fascinating, and then Wahid just like aesthetically would be something I would like to do, but I lack the subtlety to do that. So like very biased. Putting that out there, super biased. Yeah.
Well, one of the interesting things that I can just add maybe on some of these. So Jeremy Shaw's work, it's supposed to kind of epitomize this idea of transcendence, and like the universality of it. At least that's what the jurors say.
Yeah.
And then Brenda Draney, her paintings, it was interesting to see a painter because all of the other artists dealt with multimedia, or they dealt with found objects, installation in some way, and hers was painting. So that was really interesting. She does a really great job working with negative space. She has the series that they had on display were like, there were different paintings from Tent City, and she would have just these beige plain sections in this otherwise quite well rendered painting, and it was supposed to represent kind of this absence of a person. Mm-hmm. And so there was something incredibly beautiful about that, and kind of really sad, but
no, it was like they were very subtle works. Like it was super gentle, but it felt heavy.
It was really evocative.
Yeah, it was really.
And then I'll just jump over Charles and Hajra because I'm sure we're going to talk about them later as well. But William Robinson's work, his was interesting. It was dealing with kind of reworking metal and kind of that history of bronze metalwork, specifically
history of
sculpture.
Like talking specifically about the history of materials and stuff.
Yeah, but he also like it was strange because it has this kind of interest. You can tell he has this interest in history and how history is represented, specifically in relationship to bronze sculpture, and that was really interesting. And on top of that, I mean, the beginning of his video installation, it was largely a video installation. It was kind of really started out like this bizarre horror film.
Yeah.
That had a little bit of this like Doctor Who angels and the angels
moving and you're blinking
and so that was really fascinating. And then it kind of went and broke down into this almost like color field and video experimentation, which
I liked that part a lot.
It's weird because it was kind of almost a disconnect, and you wonder if that's how it's meant to be.
I went back another day, and it was like a man playing a saxophone in like a church, and it was all jazz, and I'm like, maybe that's why I didn't like it, because I was just like, something about jazz I just don't like. But like visually, I thought it was stunning. Like the set, the shots were beautiful, and the play on color was incredible. Like it was an evocative image. There was something for me that I didn't quite get there. But also like, you know, I don't necessarily have to get there, right? I don't have to. But it was interesting. Like, since it's such a long video piece too, I don't think many people are going to actually stay there the whole time. So each time you come in, it's like a different experience. And I guess that's kind of like speaking to the material of video as well. Yeah, a very interesting like study of like materials, including color, metal, and actual medium he's working with.
That's the same with one of the main parts of the Jeremy Shaw section as well was this video quickeners, and it's about a 33-minute video, and that's one of the challenges I think people face in the gallery. I mean, everyone goes through so quickly, and is somebody really going to sit there for half an hour? And so, but then there's a question of like, well, the experience is going to be different every time you do go and see it. But then what if you don't go that often?
Well, you're missing out a lot, but like, I like video for the fact that it provides you something different each time you enter it. But maybe that's like because I love making video art, and I love also watching only parts of video art. I would never watch a full piece of video art. But the Shaw piece, I really did like the Shaw piece, actually. At least the first time I went in, I felt like there was a definite sense of humor with the overlay of the found footage and then the Shaw's audio. So there was like, it was humorous, but then like the next time I went in, I didn't feel it was as funny. And I was like confused as to what message was trying to be sent. Was it like I understood that it was about transcendence. I got that. But I was wondering about how he was handling that subject matter, because and sometimes it felt like, especially with the works outside, which we can talk about in a second, it just felt like a little, I don't know, I want to say like heavy, maybe, like just like put it down, walk away sort of thing.
And I think that was actually the intention. I kind of struggle with that piece because I actually really like video art, and I like that new dynamic it gives you, and how it's just automatically interactive. That's just what it's like. And you kind of walk into this where the video is, and instead of being in a darkened room like video installations normally are, it's this very brightly lit white wall kind of space. And then they've put carpeting on the floor, and they have these like wooden fold up chairs, which is very like Southern US Pentecostal Methodist, backwoods church. And that was very much on purpose. And so I had to actually go and do a little bit of digging to find out what it was, because the gallery didn't provide any didactics.
Yeah, no didactics for it.
I mean, I find that a big problem, because if you're somebody coming with a like semi-professional research-based background, like kind of graduate students, for example, who are just finishing up their MA degree, I read a lot of theory, and then I go in and I'm just like, I don't know what's going on here. How do you expect your average gallery visitor to have any idea and to be able to immerse themselves? So I think that's a problem, and that's kind of a gallery problem. But I looked it up, and there was a great art review in Canadian Art, and I was like, okay, there's something really interesting going on here. It's based, he appropriated clips from this 1967 documentary about a Pentecostal church that they charmed snakes and
full snakes. Snakes.
It was just wild, right? And this idea of like involved like snake venom being this psychotropic, and to allow you to reach this sort of enlightenment. But then layered over top of it, the narrative over top is like this dystopian future of 500 years after we've reached like this intellectual limit in everything we can know. And so it's like, well, what's going on here? And then so I thought it was really interesting, but then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, but is this really about transcendence? Like there's something abstract about that doesn't really, it doesn't translate to talking about the idea of transcendence that well. Maybe I'm missing something.
No, I didn't quite get it either, because it felt more like a critique of the idea of transcendence. Like not being about transcendence, but like talking about how attempts to reach transcendent are like futile, and what's the point? Like the only way to get to them is to like relinquish control, and like then are you like it felt like a definite critique, again, especially with the outside work. But that's again where I run into the problem where like I'm not sure if it was supposed to be funny. Like was my reaction like of like ha, that's clever, like was that what it was supposed to be? And like of course my reaction was totally valid, and I think like the way he did the audio was to obscure those sorts of reactions, though. I'm like I just like I'm very confused, because I like it and I want to like it more, but maybe I didn't give it enough time. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back again.
It's great because art is one of those things that's so subjective that you just run into these things where you kind of, it's different for everyone. And then we're told that we're supposed to like something because it's so great and it's so involved. And even if we understand it, we're just like, well, we still don't like it that much. But then we're like, well, I don't know, maybe this is a gender thing too. We're just like, maybe we should give it a second chance. Maybe we should continue to look at it. Yeah. And when maybe it is something that we're just not going to like. And I don't know. And it depends on what your views are of the art market and like institutional space. I mean, if you're
getting the stuff there.
Yeah. Like if you're pretty like disillusioned at this point by how the art market is structured and how institutions define what is good and isn't good. Yeah. And then the way like it's often taken out where you have to be like an expert with an advanced degree to even understand what they're getting at. Yeah. And then you're kind of like, what is the value of art at this point? It's this like,
it's a huge thing, but maybe we shouldn't get into
that. No, that will be here forever.
Yeah.
And it'll get really dark and really depressing.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about like what on the, rather than just the videos, that he had like pieces outside the room as well that were like photographs from religious events where people were experiencing like ecstasy. But instead of just being like a regular frame with a pane of glass or whatever, it was like more like a crystal over top. So it like fractured the images. I didn't like those.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the frames and I look at like those glass and I'm just like, wow, that's a really cool way to go about it. And then in the end, I was like, okay, but what are we trying to say with this? I mean, it was kind of cheesy.
It was a little cheesy, wasn't it? It was either it was like a critique, like these people aren't making transcendence, they're just like, fracturing and whatever. But then if it wasn't embracing it, then it was just like, it was pretty cheesy. It was, and there's nothing wrong with cheesy. It's just the way it was set up didn't reflect that cheesiness. Like, If you're gonna go cheese, you go full cheese.
Well, I mean, for me too, like the more I thought about it too, and then I thought about what he was trying to do and how he was executing these things. And I think those photographs with the prismatic glass.
That's a good word, prismatic.
Thank you. I think those really that kind of summed up the problem I was having with it, because there is a sort of irreverence to those people in those photos. But then in the same way, he's trying to completely disconnect this idea of that quote unquote universal search for transcendence from its historical specificity for different groups of people.
Yeah.
I mean, there are very specific reasons why people in incredibly impoverished Blackwater Southern churches do take so much stock in religion and believe in the power of things like miracles, and maybe even start this pseudo-Christian cult with where they're charming snakes and trying to like do stuff with the venom.
You can't remove it from its context, and it felt removed from the context, and like not only just like having the photos there without context, but then like literally shattering them.
Yeah.
Removing them like visually from whatever context they had as well. And it was like, maybe it's the problem with the way it was set up, because the video room was set up well. Like it explained the message and everything. But this one, it was just like, there was that seating area with the books, and I just didn't get it. I wasn't like, it was a nice space, but like the work felt like kind of a secondhand thing in there. Like the most important part was this little documentary thing in the seating area. That was the most important part, rather than the artwork. So I don't know, like it probably could have been communicated better if it had been set up
better. Or if there were didactic panels.
Like, but then like also you get the idea without having to have the didactic panels in that case. It was just like,
but then it's that removal from context. And so they were something that were incredibly three-dimensional for being something that is kind of this flat thing. And then it was like, but then how they felt so flat. And it was like,
yeah,
especially because like that search for meaning through religion is something that's so common. And you see different rise of it when you see people
it's
in
a
poverty,
universal thing as well.
War-torn. Yeah.
And
like
it didn't feel universal in that context.
And I mean, I would also argue that not every single, it's not, the search for transcendence isn't universal, but when people search for it through religion, it happens in a very similar way.
Yeah.
And it happens for different reasons. And generally, it's a reason of people needing that hope in their life.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what do you do with that? And so I felt like
it was weird.
And at the same time, if he was making a mockery of it, then
it was like, if it was a mockery, then it was insensitive. And it's like,
seems like really rude and kind of like,
yeah,
how dare you speak from such a privileged position about how these people are so twisted because
people deal with their lives. Right? Yeah, no, it was confusing. Like if that you didn't enter the video room through that, the photographs, like I think my reception of the work would have been even better. Because I really did like the video. I was just so confused and like a little bit put off by the photograph work. Like I understand how like it's obviously conceptually linked and like even like linked with the material, because again, found photos and everything. It's just, I don't think it spoke to it in a very good way. It like kind of muddled it for me. But I think we've talked about Shaw for long enough.
Well, I guess that was part of the reason we also wanted to do this, because right from the beginning, when I saw who the shortlisted people were, I was like, oh, these are the two people. I was thinking like had very specific people in mind that I thought should win of that shortlist. And it partially because I knew their work, but also just because when I briefly looked up why the other artists were nominated, as great as they are, I was kind of like, okay, I hold to my biases there. But then Jeremy Shaw was announced, and I was like, what is going on here? And then you looked at the juror's decision, and it's literally like the reason they picked him was a one-line sentence that's really muddled and art speak and pretentious. And you're just like, but you are so involved in talking about the other four artists, and then this is just the reason. It's it's such a simple reason. How could anyone else be chosen? And so I got kind of mad about it.
Yeah, well, especially since like the others exhibited were like, the quality of their work is so good. And not to say that Jeremy Shaw isn't deserving of the award, but like maybe in my opinion, in that context, I would have picked somebody else. Probably Stankovic or Wahid. That's all I'm saying. But like, I just don't understand the reasoning for that, especially since last year's winner was so political and like had such a directed message, and this, like, it didn't feel like a directed message, and it didn't feel like like an examination or very like I don't know.
Well, I mean, I also have to wonder if it's because of the change in stewardship as well. I mean, this is probably a critique that will come up continuously with me and the National Gallery. I respect what they do, and I know they're really great, but they really like, basically. But they kind of tend to like, if something's political, they tend to be like, oh, we can't talk about that. Let's just talk about how nice this color is in the sky or something. They kind of shy away from the political. And I wonder if that was maybe an outcome, because I mean, past winners, last year, as you were mentioning, Abbas Akvan, his entire practice is extremely political. Even when we're looking at Natty Meyer, Dwayne Linklater, their works also tend to work really politically because they talk about colonialism quite like abruptly, and also the way that they talk about with Natty Meyer. I mean, she has this great series about trauma and everything like that. She also beaded the Indian Act as an installation piece. And then with Dwayne Linklater, his is really like using these like really man-made Western materials, but like as a way to call back to Indigenous traditions. And so he's got some really interesting conversations that are going on in his work. He was just shown at, I think it was Mercer Union in Toronto, and I missed it, and I was really bummed. But, and so you just look at, and even Annie Putaguk's work, who I mentioned her before, hers was really revolutionary as an Inuit artist, at that time. And so you kind of wonder if perhaps they pushed away from choosing one that does have overt like political connotations in what they say. Like Hajra Wahid's is hers is all about surveillance, and it's all about satellites, and she talks a lot about migration in her other work and with her background. And so, and that speaks a lot to like what's going on in the Canadian state right now and what's going on in the United States.
Yeah, that's another thing I was really confused about. 2016. All right. This is the 2016 award. 2016, one of the worst years in history. Like maybe not one of the worst, maybe not in history, but like it hasn't been a good year. And this is the year, if you're going to be political, you should be political.
You take that
because it's such an important time. But then
I'm hoping we'll see that next year, though. 2017.
Response. But we'll see. But like, why not this year?
Yeah.
Was it because this year was too political? But like, then you should be taking. I don't know.
But I mean, the power of art has always been political, right?
Yeah.
And so that'll make a lot of formalists upset that I say that, but it's. You know, even abstract expressionist was political, and then the CIA tried to use it for their means to depoliticize art and the American public. So, I mean, that was inherently political in like them trying to make it anti-political. And so it's, we don't need to get into that either. But yeah, like I've been a fan of Charles Stankovich's work for like a year and a half now, and it's just so great. And this was actually something different that I hadn't seen from him, because his work, again, deals a lot with surveillance, but specifically the expansion into the North and settler colonialism. And it's just amazing and so well researched. And he calls his projects field work. And so he does all of these, like, you go to his website, for example, and he has all of these different layers of like what he did with these different projects. And so it's like this incredible, like, archival and research-based practice.
Yeah, that's so good.
And that showed in his installation.
His installation at the gallery was like, it was really cool. And it was one of those things where it was accessible to everybody as well, because like, it's all there.
Yeah.
Right? And there were plenty of didactic panels to explain what was going on. And even if you didn't quite get something, there would be something like you could look just right next to it, and there would be something that you could connect with. Right? Like there are all these points of entryway for people that might not be able to enter into something like Robinson's work or something like that, right? Like it felt more accessible.
Yeah.
It was also
really text heavy, which I mean, I think is a challenge. But there's also, he did go into the collection, the National Gallery's collection. He picked a work from their collection, and then he did research around it to create this different kind of like, it's almost like the whole installation. It's like the curatorial project was the artwork.
Yeah.
Which is really cool for people who are like us, who are really interested in getting into careers as curators in some way. But I can see, because he also went from there into their collection. I mean, would that have caused conflict of interest? Like, there's a question there, but I found it interesting though, because like in the Sobeys, it seems like the artists, they're nominated because of particular exhibitions within the last 18 months, which that exhibition, he was probably nominated for this exhibition called Monument is Ruined. That was at the Agnes Etherington, which was not about this at all. Because this is, like I said, this was something quite different for his work that I haven't seen. So his practice that he was nominated for was this archival, heavily researched fieldwork thing, but it's usually in the context of the North and how the North reacts to, in that relationship between that and the expanse and colonialism that went into the North during the Cold War era, and looking at that burgeoning surveillance that came about during that time. So, I don't know. At the same time, that's my question. I don't have an answer to.
Just like site specific, though, I think is interesting, especially for this kind of award, because it's just like another sort of layer on the award cake. Like, he wouldn't have had to do that, but like, since his work is so tied in with the idea of location, like making work for that specific location makes sense to his practice.
That's true, and I didn't actually fully think of that, but that's great. Yeah, I think he actually lived in Dawson for a while when he was doing all the DEW project and stuff. That's why quite a bit of it is from Dawson City in the Yukon, and that's why he looks at the North a lot, is because he has spent quite a bit of time actually living there doing work.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, they're all really interesting. They were all, yeah.
It's a beautiful exhibition, and everybody should see it.
Yeah, it's up until, I think it's February.
There's time.
I think it's February. Let me double check.
Got the book.
Looking for the book. We'll see what it tells us. It's not going to tell us.
We should have had this prepared before, but
we should have.
It's okay.
One of the interesting things, this is a quick mention. This is the first year they've had an international juror, who I actually kind of read an interview he had about it. His name is Nikolaus Schaffhausen. He's German. He's from Germany. He's the director of the Kunsthalle Wien. I can't pronounce that. It's really prominent in Berlin.
But that's what. Maybe that's why Shaw won.
I don't think so, though. I was gonna say. At first I was kind of like, well, it's obviously because he knows him better. In my silly way, but
obviously kidding.
He's actually Schaffhausen has actually been really integral in Fogo Island in the artist residency work there. So he actually knows quite a bit about the Canadian art scene, which I thought was interesting, because who in Europe and the United States actually care about Canadian art, if we're going to talk about it in a very nihilistic way? But they're generally we kind of get hidden a little bit unless the artists actually leave Canada. It's harder for them to gain such large.
But I think there's a lot of Canadian artists in Berlin.
Yeah, I think so.
There's if I know a couple, just people that I actually know, then there's probably more than a few there.
Yeah.
It seems like a really wonderful place to live, too.
Actually, I think the Kunsthalle is a little bit outside of Berlin. I'm not 100% sure because I'm really bad with German geography. I can't find when the exhibition is up until. I think it's up until February, though.
I will imagine it's a National Gallery exhibition. It'll be up for a while.
So I think we're pretty obvious that we really thought Charles Stankiewicz should have won, or Hajra Waheed or something. Those are kind of we were both kind of on the same page with that. I just wanted to mention though that I kind of thought this one artist got jilted for making the short list. I'm really sorry, William Robinson. You're just getting all the non-love today.
No, he did a beautiful piece.
His work was great.
It was great. It was great.
A discredit to him, but there's this Mi'kmaq artist out in the Atlantic and was longlisted for the Atlantic this year and last year, Jordan Bennett. His work is, again, it's super political, and maybe that's also part of the reason, but it's like, it's so good because it's he's another artist who is really abrupt about talking about the history of colonialism and the colonial present we live in. But he does so in a way that's all, his work is really around ideas of like graffiti culture, music culture, skateboard culture. And so it's very kind of on the nose, very urban, but really, really direct. And I really think his work is great. He actually had a piece in Decolonize Me, which just stopped touring last year. And that was apparently a great exhibit. Yeah, but he gets shown all the time, and I just thought it was interesting that he was longlisted twice, and he didn't make the shortlist, even though his work is amazing. But he's still young. He's still got like 10 years he can be nominated. So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else.
Oh, well, but I guess we should say, like, congratulations to everybody in the exhibition. It's a beautiful, it's a great beautiful exhibition. Like, they all deserve to be there.
For sure.
They all deserve to be there, and no matter how much we smack talk Jeremy Shaw, his work is really good.
I was looking at some of his, like, the short clips of some of his other videos, and they actually seem really interesting.
No, I have issues with his website too, but that's, like, I do see the value in his work, and, like, just congratulations. Congratulations!
Yeah. And it was beautifully curated.
It was.
We have to give props to the senior curator at the National Gallery for that. I mean, I think she did a great job.
Yeah, no, the setup, it felt good. Everything felt pretty well. Like, there were obviously some things that could use work, but, like, what couldn't, right? Like, we would find something to be critical about anyway.
Yeah, that's our job. For graduate students, our job is to be critical about literally everything.
All the time.
And then not offer any solutions.
That's right.
And then be like, oh, great. Well, we're super critical. We can't get a job.
Yeah.
So this is our life. It's, but it should be, I don't know. It's also like we have to remember, and this is something we know, so we have to be careful when we're critical too, is that we know the complex things that go into curating.
Yeah.
We know that, and we know especially from such a large institution. And we also know that there are politics involved with everything.
All the time. Everywhere.
And we know people do the best they can, and they're really amazing, like, intelligent people, both the curators, the exhibit designers. Like, I mean, they all do the best they can. There are always things. So.
Yeah, it's like,
can't please everyone else.
No, you can't, and well, especially not us.
Especially not us.
Because we're like super picky, and that's okay. That's okay. But it's a beautiful exhibition, and 100% you should see it.
Yeah, it's spectacular. And you know what, we got to see, I got to learn about some artists I didn't really know much about. Yeah. So that was really exciting. I think that's all.
Yeah, so congratulations. Congratulations.
And if you stuck it through to the end, thank you for listening.
And thank you. Goodbye.